Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience today. Miss Melinda here, your spiritual worker from Miss Melinda's Metaphysical Services.com, here to bring you our weekly session of our live spirit chat taking place every Sunday at 3 p.m. United States Central Standard Time. This is a chance for you to participate in a group coaching session or a group Q&A session and get your questions answered regarding anything to do with your spiritual development, developing your spiritual connection, developing your spiritual path, your spiritual growth, and all kinds of things related and in between, including practicing magic and working with your ancestors, working with your spirit guides, developing your intuition, and connecting with your psychic abilities. So I'm happy to be here. I just want to mention really quick for those of you who, hi, fairest of them all, thanks for joining. Hello, new faces. Nice to see people here. Thanks again for your patience. I want to mention really quick for those of you who might not be familiar, this happens every week on YouTube as well as on Instagram. And on Instagram is where I take early bird submissions for questions. So if you follow me on Instagram, then you will almost always have an opportunity to submit early bird questions, which I will then address at the top of the hour. So I do have some questions to get us started today. But as always, I'm going to start with my announcement. I really have a lot to announce. It looks like my spellcasting class on basic candle magic, which was going to take place at Yarrow and Sage on Tuesday here in Austin, Texas, will be canceled. So for those of you who are in the Austin area and may have been planning to attend, it seems that class is most likely canceled at this point. It's a slow time of season here. August is like everything comes to a halt in Austin. It's way too hot to be doing stuff, and people leave town, people stay in the AC, people don't do stuff. So it was kind of a tricky time of year to promote a class. What else is going on? Today I'm going to try to make some more YouTube videos about some of the things that you all have requested, some of the topics and questions you all have requested. And sometime in the near future, I'm going to make a whole series on working with your ancestors, because I very consistently get questions about working with ancestors. Yarrow and Sage is here. I didn't know Yarrow and Sage was here. Hi, welcome. Yeah, so I very consistently get questions about working with ancestors, and I want to do a more in-depth video series that's all about the ins and outs of working with your ancestors and all of the basic foundational information that you would need to know to get started on that path. And it's going to be coming from a spiritualist perspective, because that's the perspective that I'm coming from. That's the foundation of my practice, particularly when it comes to working with spirits or working with ancestors. Don't forget, ancestors are spirits. So that's not the perspective I'm coming from when we're talking about spellcasting or folk magic, but it is the perspective that I'm coming from when I'm talking about my own spiritual beliefs and my practices surrounding working with spirits. Hi, Vic Zonmen. Thank you for being here. Nice to see you. Hi, Joanna. Welcome. Nice to see you here. What other announcements do I have? I added 15 new readings to my website yesterday. So I've got all kinds of really specific and fun new readings available. If you're interested in checking those out, it's Miss Melinda's Metaphysical Services.com. And there are more new readings on the way, hopefully in the near future. I'm going to be going on vacation the last week of August and the first week of September. And I would like to have several more readings, about 17 other readings listed on my website before I leave for that vacation. Hi, nice to see you. I'm going to be answering your specific questions, your live questions, after I'm done with the early bird submission questions. So you can feel free to submit them now, and then we'll kind of sit on them until I'm done with the early bird submissions, or you can wait to submit them when it's time. Hi, Prophetess4. I do see you. Hi, thanks for being here. Okay, what else? There was something else. My birthday is coming up on the 13th, and I want to do a special giveaway for everyone. And I have a post on Instagram where you can feel free to submit your suggestions for that giveaway. I've got some really cool ideas that people have submitted so far. And I might do like a combination of some of my favorites, or I might put those all in a drawing and then pick one or two. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet, but please go ahead and make your suggestions because I would love to give you a gift. And if you have suggestions about readings that you would like that I'm not already offering, then go ahead and submit those suggestions to me as well. Thank you, fairest of them all. All right, let's jump into these questions. What is the best way to dispose of petition papers after a spell? Best method, and right after the spell or later. So the way that I answer these questions, I'm never going to say what is the best way. What I'm going to tell you is what works for me and what I have learned through my experiences. But I think that it's really important for you to find out what works best for you. And I think it's really important for you to do some experimentation and see what feels good to you and what works well for you. So it's my opinion that in practicing magic and in spell casting, there's not one right way. There's not necessarily a best way either, because it is a very personal practice. What may work for one person may not work for another person. So I know that people are many times afraid to experiment, but I assure you that if you want to learn and you want to hone your skills, then you need to experiment at some point. But anyway, there are lots of different ways to dispose of petition papers. And one of my favorite ways is to burn the paper, because you know that I love fire magic. I love working with fire. And it's a great way to transmute energy. And it's also a great way to send that energy up to spirit or up to the universe, however you want to look at it. Send it up to source. There are beliefs in different traditions that when a petition paper is fully burned to ash, it's a positive omen that your prayer or your petition has been received. And there are also a lot of beliefs that when smoke is going up from a candle spell, or from burning a candle, for instance, when you see a lot of smoke going up, then it's a sign that your prayer is traveling, your prayer is being heard. In fact, that's one of the reasons that sacred smoke is used in spell work that has spiritual inclination, because it's a way for your intentions to travel through that smoke. So burning a paper petition is one way, but then you can look at this from another perspective as well, and you can consider your intentions behind the spell in determining how you want to handle that petition paper. For instance, if it's something that you want to get rid of, then that would be an additional reason why you may want to burn that petition, because you're getting rid of something, you're breaking a blockage, you're breaking a bad habit, or you're banishing something or someone, etc. And if it's something that you want to keep close to you, and it's a kind of paper that you feel comfortable putting in the earth, then you may want to bury it near your front door. You may want to bury it in your garden. If it's something that you want to grow, like your prosperity or your spiritual connection or your psychic abilities, for example, then you may want to burn that paper petition in a plant that grows really prolifically, or in your garden when it's very fruitful. And then you would then work with those plants, or at least put your attentions upon those plants and watch them as they grow and prosper. So too is your spell and your intentions and those energies surrounding your spell work growing and prospering. So those are just some ideas. Another idea that I really like is when there's something that I want to focus on consistently in my everyday life, like it's something that I know really needs to come from personal growth within myself in order to create these outside changes. And it's something that I need to be mindful of, or an intention that I need to be reminded of. Then I like to go ahead, and when that spell is complete, I put the paper petition in a charm bag or in a mojo bag. Especially, and you can do it even if there's some wax or some herbs or whatever on the paper petition. In fact, it might be nice to carry more energy forward from that spell with the wax and with the herbs. So these are some ideas that you can consider, and there's lots of other ways to dispose of petitions as well. So I would encourage you to look into that and to really think about your intentions behind the spell work in conjunction with how you want to take care of that paper petition. The timing of it doesn't matter so much. What matters so much is your intention. So if it's something that you want to come into fruition sooner, then you may want to be quick with how you handle it. If it's something that you want to sit and meditate on for another week or so, then you may want to leave that paper petition out with some other charms or some stones or whatever symbolic items are working for you in order to continue to meditate on that intention and think about that and remind yourself of it for a week before you get rid of the remains. Okay. Next question. Not sure what you can do at the ancestor altar. For example, can I cleanse myself there? Is that appropriate? So there's a few different things to address here. One, is your ancestor altar separate from your main altar? If you have developed your ancestor relationship and you have an ancestor altar that is dedicated specifically to your ancestors, separate from the altar that you work magic at, or separate from the altar where you may interact with other spirits at, then that ancestor altar is specifically for. Oh, Petra, don't remove your messages. I'm going to get to your questions. I promise you. So your ancestor altar is specifically for offering your ancestors respect, offering your ancestors spiritual evolution, offering your ancestors your prayers of honor, prayers of gratitude. It's specifically for, your ancestor altar is specifically for interacting with your ancestors, and a large bulk of the interactions that you have with your ancestors should be surrounding offering them respect and gratitude and honor and assisting them with their spiritual evolution. So if you have a different altar, then you would cleanse yourself at that altar. However, there are lots of things to take into consideration. Like if you've already developed your relationship with one or maybe two specific ancestors or a primary ancestor, like you have Yadi, then you may want to ask them for assistance with cleansing and protection. So if this is something that you're working on with them, if you're asking them to assist you, then you definitely can do that cleansing at that altar. So it's all about your intentions and what you're working on. But, if it's just your daily cleansing that you're doing, you don't need to do it at their altar, but you're probably also not going to insult them by doing it, near their altar or around their altar before you go ahead and interact with them. Your cleansing is important. Your spiritual cleansing is important, and it's a good thing to do before you interact with your ancestors. So I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can approach this. Hi, Glam Chizzy. Thanks for being here. I'm going to answer specific live questions when I'm done with the early bird submissions. Petra, you can ask all kinds of questions. It doesn't just have to be about your ancestors. You can definitely ask questions about your guides, and I'll be very happy to answer your question when I'm done with the early bird submissions. Next question. I was surprised to hear you say last week not to give offerings to ancestors unless you had a specific relationship with a particular ancestor you are working with. But how can I connect with ancestors without giving them water, light, smoke, and food? It feels like a catch-22. So let me take the first part of this question. This isn't what I meant. This isn't what I said. I was surprised to hear you say not to give offerings to ancestors unless you had a specific relationship with a particular ancestor you are working with. That's not what I said or what I meant to say. What we were speaking about last week are large, elaborate food offerings. And what I had said is you don't want to be leaving those large, elaborate food offerings unless you have already developed your relationship with your ancestors, unless you've already taken that relationship to the next level. What does it mean to have a developed relationship with your ancestors and have taken it to the next level? It means that one or two of them have presented themselves specifically to you. You at least have one primary ancestor that you are working with, that you are working with, and that you're working with on a regular basis. The way that you know that is through the evidence that they have provided you. And the thing is, so again, I'm coming from the spiritualist perspective. I'm coming from the spiritualist tradition and these recommendations for working with ancestors, because ancestors are spirits and because spiritualism is my spiritual practice. So you can also do research about how people in other traditions handle this, especially if you're coming from a different tradition. And I want to mention too that I'm not your end-all, be-all source for everything. I can only come from my particular experiences and from my particular perspectives. And I'm never going to tell you what the only way is. I'm never going to tell you what the right way is. I'm just going to tell you what I've learned and what works for me from my practices and my perspectives. You should always be doing other research and checking other sources and doing reading and practicing and experimenting on your own so that you can learn from different sources and learn from your own experiences and develop in those ways as well. Getting back to the question, when you are building your relationship with your ancestors, you should and you can definitely offer them pure water or blessed water or spring water. You can and you should definitely offer them incense. And another thing that would be recommended is flowers. However, food is not recommended in the beginning. The reason that big, elaborate offerings are not recommended in the beginning is because until you know for sure that the spirits that are presenting themselves to you are indeed your ancestors, are indeed trustworthy, are indeed there to help you with your spiritual evolution, then you could be putting yourself in danger of attracting other kinds of spirits. And this is very common when we work with spirits. One of the most important rules for working with spirits, ancestors are spirits, don't forget. One of the most important rules for working with spirits is that you have evidence of who they are and you have a specific intention behind the offerings that you give, because you can attract other spirits who are like, woo, free offerings, I'm going to come here, I'm going to feed off of this energy, and they can attach themselves to you. You can acquire spirit attachments, whether those spirits are negative or not. Maybe they're just hungry. Maybe they just like being around you. Maybe they're just attracted to you. But the point is, this can happen in the beginning when you're building your relationship with your ancestors. And that's why you want that relationship to be strong and sturdy. You want a solid foundation. You want to know who you're working with, and that relationship is truly developing before you start doing big elaborate offerings. So yeah, water, smoke, candles, flowers, totally appropriate and totally useful in the beginning while you're building that relationship. Next question, what are tips or suggestions you have for those of us who are newbies to spirit communication? So one of the things, one of the most important tips I've already gone over today. Make sure that you have a trustworthy relationship with a spirit before you continue communication or continue relationship with them. The way that you acquire that trust is through evidence that they provide you and through consistency in their type of communication, consistency in the energy that you feel from them. You don't enter into a long-term relationship with a spirit until they've kind of proven themselves to you. If you're really new, then the most important thing that you can do is work on developing your intuition and your spiritual connection, because those are the things that are going to offer you the avenue to go deeper and to develop this kind of communication and relationship further. Also, you need to be focusing on protection and regular spiritual cleansings. And I recommend that you do research about different ways to protect yourself and different ways to cleanse yourself when doing this kind of spirit work, right? Because it's going to be different from different traditions and different perspectives. And I know that the person who submitted this question took my recent class, my Mystic course on developing your intuition and developing your psychic abilities. And I want to mention that in that course material, there are some great suggestions for protecting yourself and grounding yourself. Also, the very last live session that I did last week has some really great information in it for cleansing yourself in the case that a spirit that you don't want to interact with should show up and try to communicate with you or try to interact with you. There are some excellent ways to cleanse your space and cleanse yourself in the previous video that I did last week. Next question, is it common to not have ancestors who are willing to work with you? So I have a couple of things to say about this. One, it takes patience, consistency, and dedication to build that strong relationship with your ancestors. It can take up to a year, maybe even more, for a primary ancestor or for any specific ancestors to actually present themselves to you. And I recommend that you remain open-minded about who you're willing to connect with from your ancestral line, because it could end up being someone from generations and generations back that you have no clue about, that you've never heard of, and perhaps even that you can't identify in your family line. So this could be a situation where you're wanting to work with specific ancestors and they're not responding to you. And that may be because they have something different that they need to do right now. They're working on their own spiritual evolution. They have a different soul contract, or they have a different spiritual commitment that they have to attend to. And right now is not the time for them to be interacting with you or assisting you. However, there may be someone else further back or in somewhere else in your family line who does want to work with you, someone that you haven't even thought of. So it's important to keep an open mind about how this may develop for you. I believe that everyone is going to have at least one or two ancestors somewhere along the lines that do want to work with them. So I believe that this just takes patience and dedication and consistency before the right one presents themselves to you. And you can definitely honor recently deceased ancestors if you just want to honor them for the sake of showing love and respect. But keep in mind that many ancestors who are recently deceased are not necessarily going to be available to us unless they have somehow become attached here or even stuck here. And in that case, it may be our job to help them move beyond so that they can go ahead and work on the rest of their spiritual evolution. So there are some things to consider in terms of working with recently deceased ancestors as well. And I would consider recently deceased to be even within the last like 5 to 10 years. So that's something to consider. Okay. Best way to learn spells for a beginner. Any book recommendations? I'm going to go way back to the basics. Book recommendations for folks who are just getting into spell work. I recommend any number of books by Scott Cunningham. He is Wiccan and I am not Wiccan, but he is an excellent source for learning how to put together correspondences. So from these kind of books that people write, like encyclopedia type books, correspondence books, this sort of thing, it's really helpful for us to learn how to put together different elements so that we can create our own spells. Because what I really recommend is that you learn to put together your own spells and that you use your intuition as well as some foundational knowledge in order to put those together, but that you learn how to either write them or to kind of intuitively, spontaneously put them together for yourself. And yeah, I recommend any kind of like herbal magic encyclopedias. Scott Cunningham has a great one. Kat Ironwood has a great one. And I recommend that you start using those sort of indexes or encyclopedias that compile different correspondences, and then you begin to see, you know, how to fit together different elements so that you can create your own spell. I also highly recommend that you get deeper into your intuition, your spiritual connection, so that you can intuitively create spells for yourself. And don't forget that tools are not necessarily needed in order to practice magic or in order to cast a spell. You can use the wind, you can use the water, all you really need is your mind and your intention. But of course, those physical items are really helpful for channeling our energy into and for focusing on in our daily lives and for kind of being a physical representation that assists us with furthering the energy and power behind a spell. So those are some things to keep in mind for beginners who are learning to cast spells. And now we're going to be moving on to your live questions. I had some people who were on YouTube before I started getting questions on IG, so I'm going to start there. Someone's asking me what are, oh, hi, Christine. Nice to see you here. They're asking, what are uangas? And are they similar to a spirit bottle in purpose? I don't know, but I think that you may be talking about a bottle that is dedicated to an orisha, or a bottle that is dedicated to a loa. And those are similar to spirit bottles in purpose. And they are for the intention of connecting with those deities or connecting with those elevated spirits or those spirits. But honestly, I'm not familiar with that word. So a different source may be a better help for you. Hi, Beth. Thanks for saying hi. Okay, so Yadi, I have one altar that has two parts. The top is for the ancestors and the bottom is for the other guides. I think I answered your question, but if you have any follow-up to that question about what's appropriate to do at your ancestor altar and if cleansings are appropriate, then go ahead and let me know, Yadi. Okay, and then Dick Sonman, when I am on the graveyard, a lot of times I feel wind blowing out of nowhere, a cold breeze. Yeah, that's definitely a sign of spirit activity. I think that you know that from your intuition already. Yeah. Okay, so what are the questions that we have over here on Instagram? And who's here that I haven't said hi to? Hi, Joanna. I did say hi to you, but you have a question. What about the disposal of candle remains? Very similar to paper petitions. So if you're using natural beeswax candles, then you can bury that wax if you want to in some of the same locations that I mentioned previously with the paper petitions, like in your garden, in a plant, in front of your front door, or beside your front door. If it's something that you wanted to get rid of, you could leave it at the crossroads, you could leave it at the cemetery, you could leave it in a garbage can at the cemetery. A lot of old school, there's a lot of old school traditions that recommend that you put stuff in water. I don't recommend that. I don't like anything that is like littering. There's lots of different things that you can consider depending upon your intentions for that spell or that working. And just like I was describing, putting the paper petition in like a charm bag, you can do that with some wax remains as well. That's a really traditional and a really useful way to keep some energy of that spell around you so that you can continue to focus on those intentions and be reminded of those intentions. A very traditional way to do that is with a paper packet, right? So when your spell is over, you would wrap up some of that candle wax and perhaps the paper petition and perhaps some herbs from the spell into a packet, tie that up with some strings and keep that with you, or maybe you would keep that in a important place that is symbolically related to your spell, like under your bed, under your pillow, by your front door, etc. I sometimes keep my wax remains in a charm bag or a mojo, just like I was talking about with the paper petition. You can also just throw stuff away. I feel like people don't talk about that. If you just want to, or if you're done with your spell, you don't necessarily need to keep anything around. And if you want to throw stuff away, that is also that can also be a sacred ritual or a sacred rite. In fact, in a lot of traditions, people believe in spirits that live in the trash that assists us with regenerating and recycling energy. So you can consider the spirit of the trash. You can consider those kinds of spirits that we have in the magical realms who are recyclers, who regenerate energy for us, or even who eat up things that we don't want and turn them into things that we do want, right? Regeneration. So you can say a prayer when you throw stuff away, and that can be a ritual in and of itself. And you can ask at that time, either this energy is banished, this energy is complete, say something from your heart along those lines, or perhaps you want to ask, let's continue to build the energy and power surrounding this. Please continue to assist me with this as this energy continues to evolve. As this rots, it is turned into new energy, new birth, etc. So there are a few different things you can do there with your intentions as well. What can you do to telepathically send a message to someone? How to know if they accept? To telepathically send messages to someone, you want to practice, you want to work on your psychic abilities and your intuition. And I've practiced this and it does work, especially if you work on developing these things within yourself. I'm going to give you a really simple, basic exercise for this. You would do some kind of meditation first to keep yourself centered, to keep yourself protected. And then you would conjure up an image of that person to the extent that you really see them, you really feel them, you're really connecting with their energy. If you feel like you need to further connect with their energy, then you would perhaps think of some memories of their personality or envision them in some actions in their daily life, maybe even specific things that you've experienced with them, so that you're kind of connecting with them further. And then you will just focus on sending a message from your mind to theirs. And here are two important tips for that. One, your area of clear cognizance or clear knowing is going to be your most important energetic area to send those kinds of messages. So that is your crown chakra. So you would want to be focusing on your crown chakra to send messages from here to their crown chakra or to their clear chakra, right? Another thing to contemplate or perhaps experiment with is that you don't have to send specific messages in terms of sentences or words. You can also just send them feelings. You can also just send them energy. So those are some things to keep in mind. And perhaps if you want to just send them feelings or energy, you could also focus on different areas like sending love from your heart, for example. Is your ancestor kind of like your subconscious? I would say no. I'm coming from a spiritual perspective. An ancestor is an actual spirit. An ancestor is an actual living spirit. They are the people who have lived before you in your bloodline. There are also ancestors of traditions. There are also ancestors of practices. There are also ancestors of the land. So there are other kinds of ancestors that are not necessarily blood related, but these are real spirits in my perspective. How do you know if the unwanted spirit interacts with you? What are the signs? The signs are if you are in tune with your energetic feelings, if you're in tune with your intuition, you'll feel that something is off. You'll feel that a spirit is there that you don't necessarily want around. You will know it. The other sign is if you acquire an unwanted attachment, they will be draining you of your energy. If they attach themselves to you, you'll feel lethargic, you'll feel cloudy, you won't be able to do the things that you usually do, your energy will be drained, you'll feel strange and out of it. And if you are someone who has been really in tune with your spiritual practice, you will recognize those signs. They could also be attaching themselves to specific areas of your home, or specific places, and then you would notice those symptoms when you're in those specific places. Hi, Fortnite Lexi 56. How's it going? If your candle remains were to remove negative energy, Joanna, I would dispose of them far away from your house. You could also dispose of those at a crossroads or in a garbage can at a crossroads or in a garbage can at a cemetery, but nothing near your house. It could also be a dumpster far away from your house. The candle burns strange, so I think the garbage might be perfect. Yeah, for sure. All right, so people are typing away on YouTube over here. Can I put the graveyard dirt from a spell in a mojo bag, and then is it suitable to reuse that same dirt for performing the spell, say another time? Yeah, you can definitely put graveyard dirt from a spell into a mojo bag. In fact, dirts or minerals or dusts are a very traditional ingredient and a very powerful ingredient for a mojo bag. And a mojo bag is a very powerful way to continue the energy of the spell. So you've got a lot of powerful elements there. Is it suitable to use the same dirt for performing that spell another time? I don't feel it is, because you're already asking a lot of that dirt. You've already used it from one spell, and then you're using it in your mojo bag. There's going to come a time when a mojo bag dies. Basically, it's done as much as it can energetically. And then it's time for you to dispose of that in a ritual in and of itself. So in a way with intention. I would say not to use that same dirt from the bag another time. But one thing that you could do, and this is what I do, is you collect a substantial amount of the dirt in the first place so that you have kind of a jar of it. And then you can use from that jar for multiple purposes so that you're kind of creating a layered effect with all of these different spell works or mojo bags that you're doing. You're welcome, Joanna. What was the prayer or affirmation that you used for spiritual business? What I use is personal for me, and my personal intention, it has always been and is always for the last like 5 years, that my spiritual evolution, the spiritual evolution of my clients, and the material evolution of my business are all hand in hand, in harmony and in balance. And that assists me with, first of all, remaining true to my intentions and being reminded of my intentions, and being in alignment with what I offer people and how I work on their behalf. And it also assists me with attracting the kind of clients that are right for me and the kind of clients that I am right for. I use my dad's dirt for protection, and I use for each spell new dirt. I have a lot of types, court case, right, and dirt from the courthouse. Is that okay? Yeah, it's definitely okay. That's great. That's great. While putting offerings yesterday at the altar, I felt some sort of feeling at the back of my neck. This is something new. What could that mean? The back of your neck is a very spiritually sensitive area. That's why the back of your neck is one of the main areas that we cleanse and we protect when we're doing this kind of work. So I don't know, Yadi, if you're using any kind of cleansing waters or cleansing colognes like Florida water or anything when you're sitting down to do your work, but I recommend that you are. And when you're using those cleansing waters or colognes, you clean the back of your neck, maybe a little bit your forehead, your head, your arms, and your hands. Your hands are very spiritually sensitive in this kind of work, and the back of your neck and the area between your shoulder blades, very spiritually sensitive in this kind of work. Spiritual attachments can happen at the back of our neck and between our shoulder blades. And feeling something there is an indication of a spirit, not necessarily positive or negative, just an indication of a spirit. So pay attention to that too, because if you start to have like a heavy feeling there, then that's a warning sign. But if you're just feeling like an awareness or an aliveness or an alertness there, then it's a positive sign, but definitely signs of a spirit being present. Hi, Linda's daughter. Thanks for being here. Rafa Mantra. Thank you. Hi, nice to see you. Okay, Glam Chizzy. I tried putting oil on myself and give myself affirmation, but I don't feel like it's working. What is the best way to use? Have faith, have trust. You got to believe that it's working. You have to believe that it's working. You have to trust that it's working. It's not just the oil. It's your willpower, your intentions, your faith, your mindset. Believe that it's working. Now, if we're talking about something more complex, like if we're talking about something big, you may need to go and consider, do I have any blockages surrounding this? Do I have any blockages in my heart about this? Do I have any blockages in my mind about this? Do I have any spiritual blockages about this? Do I have energetic blockages? You might need to go back to the root of the issue is what I'm saying. A lot of times when magic isn't working or it isn't manifesting the way that we want it to, it's because we need to go to the root of the issue. So consider that as well. Thank you, Linda's daughter. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everyone. It's the 13th. You can go back and view the video. It's going to be saved in the Instagram feed for 24 hours as long as the technology is working properly. So you can rewatch it to see your answer for the telepathy question. It's also saved on YouTube indefinitely, so you can watch it there as well. Okay, I have been getting obscure messages from a spirit guide in the crystal ball. I want to get better at interpreting the messages or getting clearer messages. Okay, so work on your intuition and developing your psychic abilities. And here is a clue. Your intuition is your gateway to your deeper and more complex psychic abilities. So get as much in tune with your intuition as possible. You can do that through mindfulness techniques. What I mean by mindfulness is by being mindful in the moment, by paying attention to how you are feeling, by listening and observing closely how your intuition works. Many times, all it takes is just for us to be more aware of how we are thinking and feeling in our daily lives and how our intuition is working for us in order for us to develop greatly. Also, a meditation practice. Miss Melinda, how do you know when your spells work? You see the results. You feel the results. However, there are some basic rules that many of us go by, and one is that you should see or feel some kind of positive signs about your spells working within 3 days. You should see or feel some movement in the world around you or in the energy around you within 3 weeks. And within 3 months, there should be full manifestation. And if there is not full manifestation, or if you don't receive any of those signs or feelings along the way, then it is time to consider a different approach. Where do you recommend disposing of the mojo bag filled with graveyard dirt when that time comes? One is for health and one is for prosperity. The same way that you do paper petitions or candle wax. So there's lots of different ideas that we've been talking about throughout this video for that. I would say, I don't recommend burning or burying stuff that is not fully biodegradable. The way that I dispose of stuff is not always traditional, because I believe that these traditions need to be evolving and need to be growing just as time is marching on, and we are evolving and growing these traditions. In order to stay alive, they need to grow with the times, and I won't do anything that is littering or polluting. So while it's very traditional to bury a mojo bag, for example, I won't do it if it's not completely natural, biodegradable ingredients, and I would actually empty out that mojo bag and dispose of the different ingredients in different ways that are appropriate for them. And the bag itself, perhaps depending on how the energy feels to you and depending upon how you feel intuitively, it could be cleansed and energetically charged and reused. But the ingredients most likely are going to need to be disposed of. And if they came from the earth, return them to the earth. If they didn't come from the earth, then think about another more appropriate disposal method. A garbage in a cemetery, a garbage at a crossroads are oftentimes a great place. And think about what I was saying earlier about, say a prayer when you dispose of things. Either for your intentions to vanish or your intentions to continue the energy. So for health and prosperity, because those are things you want to continue to grow and develop and strengthen, then perhaps you could bury some of those ingredients either near your front door or in a house plant or in a garden, etc., someplace where it can continue to flourish for you. Yeah, if there is a negative attachment, a bath can clear that out, right? So I talked about that really extensively in the last live session last Sunday. And I recommend that you go back and watch that. So a bath may be able to clear it out, but you could also need professional assistance. So go back and watch that last video because we talked about this last week too. While I've been sleeping, and this has been several nights in a row, I wake up feeling like I am choking to death. It truly feels like I have something on my throat. It's frightful. Any thoughts? Yeah, my thoughts are that you need a spiritual cleansing and some protection, because that can definitely be a spirit of sorts that is bothering you, harassing you, wanting to feed off your energy. So you need some protection, you need some spiritual cleansing. And I've been talking a lot about methods for spiritual cleansings and methods for protection. So my advice is the same as the advice I just gave Yadi. Watch that video from last week. It's on the YouTube channel. It's the very last live session before this one. There's lots of information there about protection and cleansings. And I wish you the best. I wish you lots of protection. Today is my abuelita's birthday. She passed on my birthday almost 7 years ago. How can I connect better to the purpose of that synchronicity? First of all, happy birthday. So I would honor her. You're probably already doing that, I would think. But connecting to that synchronicity, in my opinion, is about connecting to her. So I would honor her today with a candle, perhaps with some food because it's a special occasion, maybe even share some birthday cake with her, make her a part of your birthday celebration. In my opinion, that synchronicity would mean to me that she is an ancestor very much connected to you and someone who may be available for you for guidance. So honor her today. Say some prayers to her. Speak to her from your heart. Have a conversation with her. Share some cake or some candles and some water with her, maybe some flowers, and let her know that you're there to develop a relationship, and let her know that if there's anything that she needs from you in order to deepen and develop that relationship, that you are open to receiving that message and to providing for her. What's your thoughts about practicing magic under the influence? Sometimes when I drink, I have a feeling that comes over me. Yeah, so there are some kinds of magic that could be practiced under the influence. I don't do that, but when I was much younger, I used to do that, to be honest. I don't do it now because there's lots of reasons that I don't do it now, and it can be dangerous. But one of the main reasons that I don't do it now is because a lot of the personal spiritual work that I'm doing involves connecting with spirits, and I need to have my full faculties with me in order to do that safely, and in order to not put myself in any kind of vulnerable risk to being taken advantage of through that spiritual energy or through the energy of a spirit. When we're drinking, for instance, our energetic defenses are going to be down. They're not going to be as strong. Just as drinking reduces our inhibitions, it's going to reduce our energetic defenses. Therefore, we're not going to be as protected. So I would be careful about that. But, there are some traditions where they would recommend that kind of practice. It's not my tradition, but that's not for me to say that it's wrong. There are some kinds of magic where it would be beneficial to draw on that kind of wild energy and that sort of chaotic energy. Like connecting to your wild self, connecting to spirits that are fiercer and wilder, or connecting to archetypes of wilderness, connecting to archetypes of wild women, or perhaps in a celebratory fashion. Like I'm imagining like drinking wine and dancing naked around a fire. So there are times when I would feel that that's appropriate. Also, you know, when you want to connect to a kind of, I'm just going to keep saying wild. I can't seem to think of another word right now, but maybe you want to tap into creativity. Maybe you want to tap into something that is less accessible in your normal daily life, then it could be useful. But I would also urge you to contemplate how to access that kind of energy without a substance. Like, so what I would recommend is analyze what exactly is the feeling that comes over you when you've had some drinks and you suddenly want to practice magic, and then really kind of pay attention to what that feels like and what you think it is for you. And then contemplate when you're sober, how can I sort of tap into this without the substance? What is there that is drawing me in that I could recreate? And use maybe some energy work or some creative visualizations or some magic and maybe some meditation, etc., to recreate that within yourself and think about, how can I conjure this up for me? Because that's what magic is like conjuring up the energies and the attributes and the things that we're seeking, right? All right, cool. So we're nearing an hour, so I'm going to be logging off. And I thank all of you so much for being here. I thank you for your questions. I thank you for your birthday wishes. I thank you for your interactions. I love these sessions that we have together. I love our questions. And I look forward to seeing you on Sundays. It's one of the most favorite things that I do. So don't forget, every Sunday, 3 p.m. United States Central Standard Time, YouTube and Instagram, early submission questions accepted through Instagram. Oh yeah, well, writing down spells when you have a glass of wine, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I wouldn't worry about that. That's perfectly acceptable. All right, y'all. Thank you, Christine. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for your great questions and our excellent session. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Stay blessed. Be well. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Much love to you. Stay blessed.